The notification dropped into the corner of my vision at 12:17 on a Tuesday, the way a Kakao message drops, except this one had brackets. I bit into the tuna kimbap from the GS25 across the street, the foil crinkling under my fingers. The office was quiet at lunch, half the desks empty, the others occupied by people eating at their screens, nobody talking. The fluorescent panel above my head buzzed softly. The chair squeaked when I leaned back, a sound that had become familiar over 3 months of temp work at Sejonglogi. There was dust on the upper rim of my monitor I had never wiped. There was the smell of someone's reheated kimchi jjigae 3 rows over. 4 desks down, Sujin from procurement sat eating a salad without looking up. I didn't know her name beyond seeing it on the company directory. We had spoken maybe 40 words in 3 months. The rhythm of this office was comforting, and the comfort was suspect. I had taken the temp track because at 24, after a failed startup that had ended with my uncle paying off the last of my creditors, having a job without a career felt like the kindest thing I could do for myself. I went back to the kimbap. I read the notification again. Amplifier system activated. Effective multiplier x1000000. Applied to all stats. SDR, AGI, INT, per, REGN, luck, CHR, hunger, fatigue, emotion. Calibration menu available. Tap to open. Then my heart hit the inside of my ribcage like a truck. Not metaphorically. The amplified contraction punched up through my spine and the corner of my monitor cracked, a small starburst near the upper left, where the desk corner met the spike of my pulse through the floor. I could not breathe. The fluorescent panel was suddenly the loudest thing I had ever heard. A colleague 3 desks over clicked his mouse and the sound entered my right ear like a gunshot. Warmth ran down the side of my neck. The smell of the kimchi jjigae from earlier filled my entire skull, and the hunger that followed dropped the edges of my vision to black. I slid off my chair, my shoulder hit the carpet under my desk. The 4 bracket lines were still in the corner of my vision. The 4th said calibration menu available, tap to open. I could not tap. My hands were spasming, but the system read attention, not gestures. I looked at the 4th line and the menu unfolded into the rest of my vision. A row of 10 sliders. SDR, AGI, INT, per, IGN, luck, CHR, hunger, fatigue, emotion. Every slider was pinned at the right edge. X100000000. I looked at SDR, I thought down. SDR, X1. The crushing in my chest released by 90%. Not all the way, my body was still in shock, but I could breathe. I went down the list. Argy X1. Int X1. Per X1. The fluorescent buzz dropped to a buzz. The mouse click 3 desks over stopped being a gunshot. The smell of someone else's lunch went back to being someone else's lunch. Region X1. Luck X1. CHR X1. Hunger X1. The hollow at the bottom of my stomach receded. I could feel the kimbap I had eaten a minute ago as a kimbap, not as a thing I needed to eat 80 more of immediately. Fatigue X1. Emotion X1. The world stopped trying to kill me. All stats reset to X1. Default profiles saved as baseline. I lay on the carpet under my desk. My heart was still racing in my ears, but it was the heart of a person who had run too far, not the heart of a person dying. The 4 bracket lines of the activation notice were still in my vision. So was the menu, 10 sliders, all parked at X1. The colleague 3 desks over called over the partition. Min-jun, are you okay down there? I did not answer. I looked at the menu and the menu looked back. I stood up from under the desk. Slowly, the right side of my neck was wet from the ruptured eardrum. I wiped it on my sleeve and the sleeve came away dark. The guy from the next cube was half standing, looking at me with the kind of confusion that comes from not knowing whether to call someone. I think I just had a panic attack. Sorry, I'm going home. I said it the way I had practiced saying I'm fine, thanks to my uncle on the phone every 2 weeks for a year. I walked to Manager Choi's desk. Choi was typing on a spreadsheet. He had been my team lead for 3 months and had never once asked me a question that wasn't about a row count. "I'm not feeling well. I'm taking a sick day." Choi looked up. He looked at the dried blood on my sleeve. He looked at my face. He took half a second longer than he would have for someone else. "Yeah, go home." I got my jacket from the back of my chair. I picked up the kimbap, still half-eaten in foil, because leaving it on the desk to be thrown out by the cleaning crew felt wrong in a way I did not have time to examine. The corner of my monitor had a small starburst and a faint glow. I turned the monitor off, and the glow stopped. On my way out, I passed Sujin's desk. She was looking up now. Her face had the still alertness of someone who had registered something but hadn't decided whether to say anything. She did not say anything. Our eyes met for a second and a half, long enough that I had time to register the brown of her irises and the small mole below her left eye and the way her mouth pressed flat the way mine did when I was thinking. I kept walking. The elevator was empty. I rode it down 14 floors. The doors opened onto Mapo midday traffic horns, a delivery scooter slipping between 2 cabs, a woman in a navy suit hurrying toward the subway. I stepped out onto the sidewalk. I unwrapped the kimbap and took a bite. The rice was a little dry. The tuna was the tuna. The menu sat in the corner of my vision, every slider at X1. I did not know what this was. I knew it was not going away. My office stool was on the 6th floor of a narrow building above a chicken and beer place on a side street in Mapo. 1 room, single bed against the wall, small desk under the window, kitchenette with a kettle and 1 ramyun pot, mini fridge with 3 cans of cas and a Tupperware of rice from the last time my mother had sent food up from Busan. I sat on the floor with my back against the bed. The menu was still in the corner of my vision. I was hungry, not the amplified hunger that had nearly killed me on the carpet, just real hunger, having only eaten half a kimbap. I drank a glass of water from the tap. The water was the water. The window was the window. The menu hung in the corner of my vision, the way the small floor lamp in the corner of the room hung in its corner, there on doing nothing, available. I thought about food and discovered I could move my attention along the menu the way I could move a cursor. STR, AGI, INT, PER, REGEN, luck, CHR, hunger, fatigue, emotion, 10 sliders, every one of them at X1. I tapped my right thumb against my right index finger twice, for no reason except that my hand wanted something to do, and raised SDR from X1 to X2. SDR, X2. I stood up. I could stand up. My quads felt sturdier than they had a second ago, the way they used to feel back in college when I had been running every morning. I raised SDR to X5. SDR, X5. I picked up the kettle. The handle creaked. I could feel the metal of the handle compressing under my fingers in a way handles were not supposed to compress. I set the kettle down very carefully and lowered SDR to X2. SDR, X2. I filled the kettle from the tap. I set it on the stove. I sat back down on the floor. I raised INT from X1 to X2. INT X2. The first thing I noticed was that I could read the small print on the safety sticker on the kettle from across the room. Warning, hot surface. Do not touch element while in use. The font was 4 points. I had not been able to see it from the desk 5 seconds earlier. The second thing I noticed was that I could read the model number stamped on the side of the mini fridge from the same angle. The third thing was that the air smelled like 4 different things at once that I had been smelling as one thing. The soy sauce stain on the kitchenette towel, the dust in the floor vent, the laundry detergent on my sweater, the cigarette smoke that drifted up from the chicken and beer place at street level, and the smell clarity was somehow connected to the print clarity, as if INT amplified more than I had guessed. I lowered INT back to X1. INT X1. The kettle whistled. I poured the water over a packet of instant ramyun. I ate the ramyun sitting on the floor with my back against the bed, slurping each forkful without dignity, because there was nobody to be dignified for, and because I had used 1,200 calories already today that I had not put in. I thought about who I could tell. My sister Yoon Young in Busan was the obvious answer. My mother, My father, who I had not been home to see in 8 months, and who, the last time I had spoken to him on the phone, had used the phrase "a stomach thing" to describe the pancreatic surgery scheduled for the end of the month. I was not going to tell any of them. Not yet. I did not have the words, and I did not know whether telling anyone would make this safer or more dangerous. I finished the ramyun. I set the bowl in the sink. I looked at the menu. SDR was still at X2. I had forgotten to drop it after the kettle. I tapped my thumb against my index finger twice and dropped it. SDR X1. The menu sat in the corner of my vision the same way the small lamp on my desk sat in its corner, on, doing nothing, available. I turned the lamp off. I lay down on the bed in my clothes. I had stopped trying to be exceptional, and the universe had assigned me a system with no opt-out. I closed my eyes, and the menu stayed where it was, soft and parked at X1. I woke at 7:14, the way I had woken at 7:14 for 3 months. Alarm, then ceiling, then the small ache where my pillow had folded under my neck. The menu was still there in the corner of my vision. Every slider parked at X1, exactly where I had left it on Monday night. I ran through a quick check on the body. Heart normal, right ear tender, but the eardrum had closed without me asking. I did not know yet whether IgEN had been on overnight at X1 or whether the body just healed like a body. I would find out by the end of the day. I sat up. The stiffness in my back was the ordinary stiffness of having slept fully clothed. I walked to the kitchenette. The menu did not require me to look at it, the way the time on my phone was there without me asking. I thought of it as a small permanent neighbor in the corner of my vision. I filled the kettle. While the water heated, I noticed the menu had a label at the bottom edge I had not seen yesterday, profiles. I focused on the word, and the menu unfolded a second panel. Profiles. Baseline. One profile, no others. The all X1 default I had saved on the carpet under my desk. I filed that away. I drank the tea standing at the small desk under the window. The morning was a normal Mapo morning. A woman walked her small dog past the chicken and beer place. A delivery van double parked outside the GS25 across the street. The menu hung in its corner. I decided to spend the next 90 minutes, until I had to leave for the office, testing the menu one stat at a time, starting with SDR. I picked up the empty paper cup from yesterday's coffee. I tapped my right thumb against my right index finger twice and raised SDR from X1 to X2. SDR X2. I pinched the rim of the cup. The paper yielded a little. I raised SDR to X5. SDR X5. The rim folded inward where my fingers met it. I raised SDR to X10. SDR X10. The cup crushed in my palm like tissue. I dropped SDR back to X1. SDR X1. My thumb and finger joints ached for about a minute even after I dropped the stat. I noted the cost. SDR at X10 was paid after the fact, in the joints. I sat with that for a moment. I held a chopstick from the kitchenette drawer in my right hand. I dropped it toward the floor and at the same time raised AGI from X1 to X10. AGI X10. My left hand was there before the chopstick. The catch was effortless, not fast, just present. At X1 I would not have made the catch. The chopstick would have hit the floor and skittered. I dropped AGI back to X1. AGI X1. The cost of AGI did not feel like the cost of SDR. It felt like a small dizziness, the way I felt when I had stood up too fast from sitting too long. I sat with that for a moment as well. Then I raised SDR to X5 and lifted the kettle, full of water this time, carefully. The handle did not creak. I lowered the kettle to the stove and dropped SDR. SDR X1. I looked at the menu in the corner of my vision. What had been a strange, intrusive presence 12 hours earlier was now more like a tool than a curse. I sat at the small desk and raised PER from X1 to X10. Per X10. The building came alive. The dull rumble of the chicken and beer place starting prep below. The upstairs neighbor's radio, a news program, the price of cabbage. The elevator down the hall dinging 2 floors below. I sat with it. The sound was layered but readable, like a song with the instruments separated. I raised PER to X100. Per X100. The neighbor's TV came in distinct words, a news anchor saying today's price of cabbage is 2,301 per kilogram. A car horn 3 streets over made me flinch. The dripping tap in the apartment below mine was suddenly a drumbeat. The volume hadn't increased uniformly. The world had become more detailed. I raised PER to X1000. Per X1000. The world became the inside of a war. Every conversation in the building, every footstep, every fluorescent ballast humming, every refrigerator compressor cycling, every dripping tap, every car horn, every voice on every neighbor's television, all at the same volume. I could not tell which sound was which because the dripping tap in the apartment below mine was as loud as the news anchor upstairs. I dropped per back to X1. Per X1. My ears rang for 10 minutes after. I noted the cost. Per at X1000 had a cooldown. I noted also that PER did not amplify selectively. At X100, the world was not louder, it was exposed. Per is going to be the most useful and the most dangerous stat, I thought, and I filed the thought the way I would file a note from a meeting. I stood at the window with my ears still ringing slightly. I decided that X10 was the highest I would run per in public. 8:42 a.m. I had time for one more test. I sat back down at the desk. I made a small paper cut on the side of my left thumb with the edge of an envelope and watched it bead. I raised OEGEN from X1 to X10. Region X10. The bead of blood stopped beading. The cut closed in 3 seconds. I felt my stomach grumble the instant OEGEN finished. I dropped OEGEN back to X1. Region X1. I made the cut again. This time at X1, the cut did not close, it dried slowly, the way cuts dried. I raised OEGEN to X10 a second time, closed in 3 seconds, I dropped it. Hunger again larger. I raised it a third time, closed. The hunger was now genuine. Fatigue compounding, sleep advised. The first unprompted system message I had ever received. The system did not editorialize, and the system was not editorializing now, it was reporting. Fatigue was compounding because OEGEN had cost me roughly 400 calories in the last 60 seconds, on top of having slept only 6 hours after losing 2 eardrums and the lining of 1 carpet's worth of dignity yesterday. I took the message as instruction. I ate a banana standing at the kitchenette. The menu went back to baseline. I got dressed for work, black sweater, jeans, brown jacket. I checked the menu one more time, every slider at X1. 9:08 a.m. I stepped into the elevator on the 6th floor and rode it down. The car was empty. The numbers above the door changed. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The elevator dinged. The lobby had Soo-jin in it. She was coming in, dressed for work, the same denimish bag over her shoulder she carried every day. She saw me. We had eye contact for about a second. Morning. Morning. That was the whole interaction. She got in the elevator I was getting out of. I stepped past her. I walked across the lobby. I pushed through the glass front door of the building onto the side street in Mapo at 9:09 on a Wednesday morning with the menu in the corner of my vision and the morning street smelling like fried dough and exhaust. I walked to the subway with the menu parked at X1 and the morning street smelling like fried dough and exhaust. I had no plan for what I would do with the system. I had a profile saved as baseline and a tick in my right hand and a manager who would not look up from his spreadsheet when I walked in. That was the whole list. It would have to do for one day. Manager Choi looked up when I walked in at 9:28 and looked back down again 2 seconds later, which was the longest he had looked at me in 3 months. The Sejong Logi office floor was about half full at that hour, people getting coffee from the carafe at the back, opening laptops, the usual Wednesday morning small noise of a small Korean office on a Wednesday morning. The starburst crack at the corner of my monitor was still there. I had not asked IT to swap it because I had not wanted to draw attention. I sat down. I opened the spreadsheet I had been working on yesterday afternoon. started where I had left off at 6 p.m. on Tuesday and noticed 3 things in the first minute. 1. Nobody had cleaned my desk or asked about Monday's panic attack exit. The office was treating yesterday's incident as a non-event. 2. Sujin's chair was empty. She had not arrived yet. 3. The menu in the corner of my vision was no longer the loudest thing in my attention. It was there: STR, AGI, INT, PER, IGN, luck, CHR, hunger, fatigue, emotion, all parked at X1, but the way I noticed it had changed. It was something like the way I noticed the buzz of the fluorescent panel above my head: present, low grade, not actively claiming me. I worked the routing rows until 9:55. Then I picked up my notebook and walked to the conference room with the rest of the team. The conference room at the end of the floor seated 8, and 7 of us sat, Manager Choi at the head, 4 full-timers, 1 other temp, and me. Choi had a slide deck open on the projector showing Q4 shipment routing through Incheon. He walked the team through 3 options. The discussion was the usual office discussion. One of the full-timers asked about turnaround, another about carrier dependability. The second newest of the full-timers had a low-grade disagreement with the most senior about which option had less risk on Korean New Year week. I took notes. I said nothing for 15 minutes. The other temp said nothing for 15 minutes. We were both there to take notes. Then Choi said, "Min-jun, you've been on these routing rows for 3 months. Any read?" It was a defer to junior question. He was looking for a small contribution from a junior to put on the meeting record. He was expecting a competent but modest 1-line answer. I tapped my right thumb against my right index finger twice. I raised INT from X1 to X10. Int X10. The slide on the projector went from a flat 3-option graph to a graph I could read across 9 variables I had not seen 2 seconds earlier. The carriers had cost structures. The cost structures had seasonal fuel surcharge clauses. The seasonal clauses had reset dates. The reset dates were different by carrier. The contract templates papered over an inconsistency in how typhoon season premiums were billed by route. I knew all of this in the way I knew the back of my own hand 5 seconds after raising INT. I answered. Hanjin Coastal is the Q4 specific cost saver. Their fuel surcharge structure resets in early November, which means anything we ship in late November and December gets billed against the post-reset rates. The other 2 carriers reset in January. The savings on the Incheon-Busan reefer routes alone are between 3 and 4% of bottom line over the quarter. The room was quiet. CJ Korea Express is the fallback. Their reefer rates on the same routes have been undercutting Hanjin since August. The catch is Option 2's Typhoon Season Surcharge Clause. It triggers a 12% premium on shipments through Yosu, not Incheon. The contract template doesn't distinguish between the 2 ports. If we sign Option 2 as is, and any Q4 shipment gets rerouted through Yosu, which happens about 8% of the time, statistically, on Korean New Year congestion, we eat the premium without realizing we agreed to it. I stopped. I lowered INT back to X1. Int X1. The slide on the projector went back to a flat 3-option graph that I could no longer read across 9 variables. Choi looked at me. The other temp looked at me. The 2 full-timers who had been low-grade disagreeing about Korean New Year looked at me. The senior who had asked about carrier dependability looked at me. Choi said, "How long have you been reading the carrier contracts?" It was the shape of a question, but it landed as a statement. He was not interrogating, he was filing. "A while," I said. Choi nodded slowly. He did not ask a follow-up. He moved the meeting forward. He covered the rest of the slide deck in 12 minutes. The meeting ended at 10:42, 12 minutes overrun. He didn't look at me again. He didn't have to. At 11:15, I was standing in the break room at the coffee carafe. I had gotten a second tuna kimbap from the GS25 downstairs on the way to work. I was eating again, twice as often, because the morning REGEN test had pushed me into deficit and I had not finished catching up. I was peeling the foil from the kimbap at the small counter when Soo-jin came in. She filled her water bottle from the dispenser. She looked at the kimbap in my hand. She looked at my face for a second. Her face had the same still alertness it had had when I had walked past her desk on Monday afternoon. She did not say anything. She walked out. The whole interaction took 6 seconds. I went back to my desk. I sat down. I looked at the menu in the corner of my vision. The cost of INT at X10 for 45 seconds in a room with my manager was being seen. The cost of running it again at the same level in the same room with the same manager was being seen again. That was a worse cost than the joint ache STR X10 left behind because the joint ache faded. The system's first lesson, 12 hours after activation, was that amplification had a social cost as steep as its physical one. I taped the lesson to the inside of my head where I kept the things I did not want to forget. I dialed nothing up for the rest of the day. I ran the spreadsheet at X1 INT. I ate the kimbap. I drank the coffee. I worked. At 6 o'clock, the office floor began to dim as people clocked out. I finished the last row of the spreadsheet at 5:58. I saved the file. I closed the laptop. I sat at my desk for a minute looking at the menu. I had not amplified anything above default in nearly 7 hours. By every external measure, I had been exactly the temp I was on Tuesday, and Manager Choi had glanced at me 3 times during the afternoon, at 1:42, at 3:11, at 5:30. I had counted. The cost of being seen was that I stayed seen. I got my jacket. I rode the elevator down 14 floors. The lobby had the same security guard as every evening. I walked out into Mapo at 6:08, evening traffic already thickening for the commute. I walked the 4 blocks to Hapjeong Station. The Hongdae Line train was crowded Wednesday after work, and I stood in the door well holding the handrail with the menu in the corner of my vision and every slider at X1. I had a rule now. The rule was that the menu was for emergencies and for nobody being watching, and that nobody is watching was rarer than I had thought when I saved the baseline profile that morning. I wrote the rule into the inside of my head in the small clear language I used for things I did not want to forget. I rode the train 2 stops past my stop because I was thinking and did not notice. I walked the long way home through Hapjeong with the menu parked at X1 and the rule written in my head. The chicken and beer place under my office stall was open and full. I went upstairs and made instant ramyun and ate it on the floor in the dark. I ran STR at X10 for the second morning in a row because the kettle handle had not entirely forgiven me from Monday, and the kettle handle was not the only thing I had to be careful with anymore. STR X10. I lifted the kettle off the stove. The handle creaked under my fingers in a way handles were not supposed to creak. I set it down. I dropped STR. STR X1. The tightness in the joints of my right hand stayed for another minute or 2 after the stat went down. Joint memory. I filed it away for later calibration. I drank the tea standing at the small desk under the window. I got dressed. Black sweater, jeans, brown jacket. Soo-jin had looked at the kimbap wrapper in the break room yesterday and not said anything. I did not think she was going to ask about it. I was wrong about that, but standing at my window, I had no reason to know it yet. At 11:32, Soo-jin walked over to my desk. It was the first time she had approached my desk in 3 months. She was wearing a thin gray cardigan over a white shirt, and she had her work phone in one hand. "Sorry, do you have a spare USB stick? Mine just died, and I need to move a file before lunch." I had a USB stick in the top drawer, a small black and orange plastic thing with the temp agency's logo on it, given out at orientation. I opened the drawer. I took it out. I turned to hand it to her. I tapped my right thumb against my right index finger twice without changing any stat. The tick had been about to fire, STR up, steady the hand for the transfer, and I caught it. What I needed was the opposite of amplification. What I needed was to make sure I did not tighten my fingers on the USB at the wrong moment and snap it in half, or worse, scrape her palm. I held the USB out at X1, deliberate, slow, our fingers did not touch. The exchange took 1 second. "Thanks, I'll bring it back." "Keep it." She nodded, and walked back to her desk. I sat down, I looked at the menu in the corner of my vision, every slider exactly where it had been before the exchange. X1 was a tool, the dial pointed both ways. X1 was not just the absence of amplification, it was the multiplier I had chosen because not breaking things was what mattered. The slider down was a real choice, not a default. The afternoon got back to being the afternoon. Soo-jin went back to her desk. She no longer felt like an abstraction at desk 4 down. She had a name and a presence and a thin grey cardigan. At 2:45, Manager Choi walked over to my desk with a thin folder. He put it down on my desktop without looking up from the papers he was already carrying. I want a written read on the 3 options from yesterday. By Monday, full margins, full carrier risk profiles, the Hanjin and CJ angles you raised, plus option 1. Yes. Choi nodded and walked away. I looked at the folder. Inside were 3 printed copies of yesterday's slide deck routing options marked up in red ink. The marks were not negative, they were specific questions: fuel surcharge resets, typhoon season margin clauses, the Hanjin advantage in November, the CJ undercut. It was several days of work at temp rate, about 90,000 of my time. It was also the first piece of work Choi had given me that was more than data entry. I noted that. I put the folder in my bag. I worked on the report at home that night, INT at X1 human speed. I could have raised INT to X10 and finished the report by midnight. I could have raised it to X100 and finished in 20 minutes. I did not. The reason took me most of an hour to articulate, and I articulated it sitting on the floor next to the desk with my head against the bed frame. The report was a test. Choi was testing whether the Min-jun in the meeting was the same as the Min-jun on the page. If I delivered a X10 INT report, Choi would know the meeting had been the real Min-jun. If I delivered a competent but human report, Choi would conclude the meeting had been a fluke. The right answer was the human report, because being thought of as a fluke was the cheapest social cover I had available, and I was going to need cheap social cover. I worked until 11. I went to sleep with the folder still open on the desk. I had a USB stick at the office that I had given to Soo-jin. I had a project on my desk that I was going to make sure was not impressive. I had a menu in the corner of my vision and a rule and a tick in my right hand. The list was getting longer by the day. I closed my eyes and the menu stayed where it was, parked at X1. I made the decision standing at the kitchenette sink on Friday night, washing the bowl from the ramyun I had just eaten and looking at the menu in the corner of my vision the way I looked at the toaster. The Choi report was open on the desktop under the window. I had been working on it for an hour after dinner. I was tired of sitting. The morning kettle tests and the stairwell of the mind had all been small amplitude. The menu showed multipliers all the way up to X10000000 that I had not touched. I wanted to know what STR at X100 actually felt like in a body that was running it through a body. The fire emergency stairwell of my building had 14 floors of switchback and was empty after 9. I got dressed in track pants, a black t-shirt, and the beat-up sneakers I had not worn since the year I had still been running every morning. I took a small bottle of water. I noted what I did not know, whether STR amplified pure muscle force or also tendon elasticity or also reaction time on foot. I was going to find out. 9:47. I was at the foot of the stairwell, grey steel door, small wired glass window, the smell of 20 years of building staff sneaking cigarettes. The 14 floors above me were quiet. I looked at the menu, STR for the climb, AGI for foot placement at speed. I tapped my thumb against my index finger twice. STR X100. ARGI X10. I looked at the bottom of the menu and asked, just by attention, no thought form, whether the system could give me a timer. A new line surfaced at the bottom of the calibration panel. Secondary displays, timer, heart rate, calorie out. I picked timer. A small clock appeared in the corner of my vision next to the menu, reading 00000. I thought GO. The clock started. The first stride covered 4 steps. The second covered 6. The third covered 7. And from there I was climbing 7 steps per stride. The switchback turn at each landing I handled by planting my outside foot and pivoting at X10 AGI. The fluorescent lights blurred. The handrail moved past me in long single passes. Floor 7 at 18.4 seconds. Floor 14 at 47.2 seconds. I stopped at the roof door. I dropped STR. I dropped AGI. STR X1. AGI X1. The clock stopped at 00:00:47:6. My quads were screaming. My heart was hammering, but at X1 per, I could only feel it as ordinary cardio elevation, not the chest cracker of Tuesday's activation. The system surfaced a new line. Calorie out estimate, 1,840 cal. Fatigue compounding, recovery 6-8 hours. I stayed bent over at the roof landing for about a minute. I drank half the bottle of water. I looked at the menu, STR at X1, AGI at X1. The timer panel still showed 47.6, grayed out. The calorie out line floated in the corner. I started down the stairs at human speed. The descent took 8 minutes. My legs shook on every landing. By the 4th floor, I was gripping the handrail for stability. By the 2nd floor, my vision was graying slightly at the edges. I had not eaten enough today, and the calorie out had pushed me into deficit. I hit the lobby at 9:57:48 p.m. I sat down on the bottom step. I sat there for 2 minutes. I got up. I walked to the elevator. I rode it up 6 floors to the office still. 10:02, I got the gel pack from the mini fridge, the one I kept for the once-a-week migraine the laptop gave me, and laid it on my right quad. I ate a packet of instant ramune. I ate an apple. I ate the rest of the rice from the Tupperware my mother had sent up. About 1,200 calories. The calorie out line in the corner of my vision recalibrated. The deficit dropped from 1,600 down to 400. The system tracked calorie balance in real time. The system was more interface than I had thought. I sat with that. I decided I was going to spend tomorrow morning testing the secondary displays panel, heart rate, calorie out, and anything else that was down there. I lay on my back on the bed with the menu in the corner of my vision and the calorie outline slowly ticking down towards 0. The pain budget for STR at X100 for 47 seconds was 8 hours of quad ache and 6,000 calories of recovery. I filed the number. I had a system to learn and a report to finish, and a sister I had not called. I closed my eyes and the menu stayed where it was, soft and parked at X1. Saturday came late because my quads had voted no on Friday night and the Saturday body was honoring the vote. I woke around 10:14 with my legs heavy and my right hand still feeling like a hand. I spent about 10 minutes just lying on my back staring at the ceiling, letting the menu sit in the corner of my vision the way it now did. I picked the secondary displays panel. Heart rate 64 BPM. Calorie out 12 cal min. Metastat READOUT. Hunger 74% sated. Fatigue 51% rested. Emotion baseline. I sat with the percentages. Hunger I could understand. I had not eaten breakfast. Fatigue at 51% meant Friday night's stairwell was still in my legs. Emotion at baseline meant nothing I knew how to interpret yet. I thought about REGEN, the slider that had healed my paper cut in 3 seconds on Wednesday morning. I had only run REGEN in short bursts so far. I had not run it sustained. The plan presented itself in 2 minutes. REGEN at X10 for the rest of the morning would heal my quads in 2 hours. INT at X2 would let me finish the Choi report by noon. The combination was efficient. The menu had told me from the start that REGEN at X10 cost calories at a steady rate, but I had not eaten breakfast and I told myself I could eat at lunchtime. I sat down at the small desk under the window. Region X10. Int X2. The calorie out reading climbed from 12 to 285 cal min. I worked on the report for 2 hours and 45 minutes. The report came together. The quads stopped hurting. By 12:30, the soreness in my legs was a memory. By 1:12, my hands were shaking on the keyboard. My vision was graying at the edges. The calorie out had been steady at 285 a minute for the whole morning, about 47,000 calories. I had not eaten. Hunger critical, energy deficit, 42,000 cal, stat performance degrading. The menu's SDR slider visibly drooped in my vision. SDR at X1 was functioning, but the slider was grayed out, the system telling me I could not push it up without collapsing. I stopped typing. Region X1. Int X1. The calorie out dropped to 12, the deficit didn't. I stood up, my legs went heavy under me. I walked to the kitchenette. The fridge had 3 cans of Cass, a half-empty bottle of soy sauce, and the empty Tupperware from the night before. I put on my jacket and went downstairs. The GS25 across the street had a warm rotisserie chicken in the warmer at the back. I bought it. I bought 3 packets of instant ramyun, 2 bento boxes, 1 tonkatsu, 1 fried rice, 2 bananas, and a Snickers bar. The cashier was a 20-something kid I had never seen before. He raised an eyebrow when I set everything on the counter. He did not ask. I paid in cash, 28,400. I carried the bags upstairs. I sat on the kitchenette floor with the food spread out on a towel because the table was too small for all of it. I ate the first bento box in 10 minutes. I ate the second in another 10. I ate the rotisserie chicken with my hands, pulling the meat off the bone in long strips. I boiled 2 of the 3 ramyun packets and slurped them straight from the pot. I ate the bananas. I saved the Snickers because my jaw was tired. By 2:15, the calorie out reading on the menu had recalibrated. Hunger climbed from 18%, sated up through 60%, 75%, 84%, about 4,800 calories in 45 minutes. I stopped at 84% because my stomach hurt. I lay on the kitchenette floor. At 8:14 that evening, I vomited. My stomach could not handle the volume of food. I cleaned up. I lay on the bed. At 3:02 in the morning, the menu surfaced an unprompted line. Region running at X1, gastric damage healing, hunger 31% sated, fatigue 58% rested. The system had turned REGEN on by itself while I was asleep, not at any amplified level. At baseline X1, the system had a small flaw of self-care it would trigger without me asking. I noted that. I got up, I ate the Snickers, I ate 2 more spoonfuls of rice from the Tupperware, I drank a full glass of water, I went back to bed. Half asleep, I let the equation form in my head. Amplification equals calories, calories equal food. I could run X10 stats for some number of hours per day if I ate enough meals to cover it. I could run X100 only for short bursts. I could run X1000 essentially never sustainably. I had a budget now, not just a rule. I filed it. I fell asleep. I slept until 10:30 Sunday morning with the menu in the corner of my vision and the budget half formed in my head and the wrappers from a small grocery store's worth of food still on the kitchenette floor. The system amplified my body. The system amplified my body's costs. The math was the same math my uncle had used the day he gave me the 30 million won and said keep track of everyone. I closed my eyes and the menu stayed where it was, parked at X1. I had not planned to be on the Hongdae Line train on Sunday night, but the Daeso in Hapjeong had a stack of yellow highlighters at a price that justified a 40-minute round trip, and the Choi report needed the yellow highlighters more than I needed to be home. 9:48 p.m. I was at the Hapjeong subway entrance with a paper Daeso bag, 3 new pens and the highlighters. I went down to the platform. The train arrived. I got on. The car was moderately crowded, Sunday night riders coming back from drinks, a handful of students, a couple in their 20s leaning against opposite handrails, not quite looking at each other. Standing in one of the doorwells holding the handrail was Soo-jin. She was wearing a denim jacket and jeans and reading something on her phone. I had never seen her outside the office before. We made eye contact for half a second. She nodded once. I nodded back. I stood near her. There was room, but I did not try to make conversation. She went back to her phone. The train pulled out of Hapjeong, 2 stops to Hongdae. The menu in the corner of my vision sat at X1. The train arrived at Hongdae at 10. The doors opened, people shuffled. A large man in his late 40s got on, heavy build, suit jacket open over button-down with the top 2 buttons undone, smelling strongly of soju and grilled pork. He scanned the car. He saw the empty seat next to Soo-jin. He sat down. He was not quite leaning into her, but he was close. Soo-jin shifted away slightly, the way women shift away on subways. I watched in the reflection of the door window across from me. The doors closed. The train moved. The drunk said something I could not quite hear, but the tone was unmistakable, leering, slurred. He put his hand on Soo-jin's thigh. She froze. Her grip on the handrail tightened. Her eyes flicked to the floor. I tapped my right thumb against my right index finger twice. SDR X10. ARGI X10. I stepped across the door well. I stopped in front of the drunk. Hand off or off the train. He looked up, he grinned. And who the hell are you? I did not answer. I reached down and took his wrist. The motion looked casual. At X10 SDR it was anything but. I lifted his hand off Soo-jin's thigh and set it on his own lap, palm down. The drunk's eyes widened at the force he had just felt. He stood up, he swung. His fist hit my left shoulder. I barely felt it. I placed my open palm against his chest and pushed, not a strike, a push. He went backward 4 meters. He hit the metal partition between the door wells. The partition dented inward in a body-sized shape. He slid down it and sat on the floor, dazed but not bleeding. The car went quiet for 2 seconds. A young man at the other end of the car had his phone up, recording. He had started recording the moment I had stepped across the door well. I realized this now. Another passenger, a woman in her 30s wearing glasses, also had her phone out. I dropped SDR and AGI. SDR X1. ARGI X1. I turned to Soo-jin. She was staring at me with an expression I could not place. Next stop, we get off. She nodded once. The train pulled into Sangsu. The doors opened. I stepped off. Soo-jin followed. The car behind us was full of people lifting phones and calling out, one person yelling something I did not turn around for. The doors closed. The train pulled away. Sangsu platform, 10:14. The platform was mostly empty. We stood near the platform edge facing the tunnel. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. You didn't break his ribs. I was careful. She looked at me. Her expression was not afraid. It was closer to the assessment she had given me in the break room on Wednesday, but more focused. Tomorrow, lunch, the roof. Yes. We took the next train 2 minutes later. We did not sit together. There were no 2 empty adjacent seats. We got off at Hapjeong, where we parted. She walked toward Hongdae. I walked toward Mapo. The menu in the corner of my vision sat at X1. I walked home with the certain knowledge that I had just been filmed. I got to the office still at 10:51 p.m. I sat on the bed in my clothes with the menu parked at X1 and the certain knowledge that 2 phones had been filming and that one of those videos was already on YouTube or Kakao Story or both. The drunk on the train was probably awake by now. The bureau, if there was a bureau, was probably finding out. I had broken the rule on day 6. I had not broken Soo-jin's wrist. The 2 were not the same thing, and the second one was more important. I closed my eyes, and the menu stayed where it was, parked at X1. Monday morning told me about itself through my phone, the way Monday mornings did, and the phone was holding a clip of me with 47,000 views, and a hashtag I had not invented. The notification at the top of Kakao Story was from a contact I had not spoken to in years, a friend of a friend from university. He had tagged me. I tapped through. The clip was 22 seconds long. It showed me from across a subway car at Hongdae. Back of my head, then my right arm reaching down to take the drunk's wrist, then the drunk standing up, then the push, then the drunk going backward into the metal partition that dented in a body-sized shape. The clip cut before Soo-jin and I walked off. The caption read, Hongdae Line 10:03 p.m. Sunday, Subway Hero or Hooligan, Hongdae Anomaly. I scrolled. The same clip had been reposted to 3 other accounts with cumulative views near 200,000. SBS's morning news ticker on its mobile site said, HONGDAE line passenger filmed using unusual force, police investigating. I put the phone down, I got dressed. I decided in 10 seconds that going to work was the right call because not going to work was its own signal. At 9:28, I walked into the Sejong Logi office. Manager Choi looked up at the exact moment he always did. He looked back down. His face had a shadow on it. He did not say anything. I sat at my desk. The starburst crack at the corner of my monitor had been there since last Tuesday. The desk front and the keyboard had been wiped down by the cleaners over the weekend, but the monitor still had the small fracture. I worked. At 11 o'clock, Manager Choi's phone rang. He answered. He said into it, "Give me a minute," and stood up and walked out of the office with the phone to his ear. He was gone for 40 minutes. During those 40 minutes, Soo-jin walked past my desk and dropped a folded post-it onto my keyboard without breaking stride. I unfolded it. It said, "Roof 12:15. I put it in my jacket pocket. At 11:40, Choi came back. He glanced at me once. He did not make eye contact for the rest of the morning. 12:15, the roof, open-air, concrete, low wall around the edge, 2 HVAC units. Soo-jin was already there, sitting on a folded sweater near the edge, eating a triangle kimbap. I had a kimbap too. I sat 2 meters from her on my own jacket. I saw the clip. I know. Was it the only time? It was the first time anyone filmed me. She ate a piece of her kimbap. The wind moved her hair around her face. My friend's older brother is in the specialist bureau, Anomaly recovery. They get clips like that flagged about once every 2 months, and one of them turns out to be real about once a year. And the rest? CGI, wires, trick angles, stage magic, sometimes drugs, sometimes mental illness. Which am I? I think you're the real one. She did not smile when she said it. I did not deny it. Yes. She nodded once. What is it? I told her, not in a long monologue, in the tight, short sentences of someone who had rehearsed not telling for a week. I have a system, a HUD, multipliers on every stat. I'm running everything at x1 right now. When I pushed the drunk, I was at x10. The maximum I have available is x100000000. I stopped, I waited. She finished her kimbap. Okay, tell me what you need. We sat on the roof for another 5 minutes. Neither of us said anything else. Then she stood up, gathered her sweater under her arm, and walked back to the stairs. I waited 2 minutes. I went down separately. At 6:08, I walked out of the Sejong Logi building. I had Soo-jin's number now. We had exchanged at the end of the roof conversation, the first time I had had her number in 3 months. I had a deadline. She had said her friend's brother would tell her by Wednesday what the bureau had on file. I had weeks, not months. I walked home along the same route I had walked Friday night. The chicken and beer place was open. I went upstairs. I made instant ramyun. I sat on the floor with my back against the bed and looked at the menu in the corner of my vision. I had not amplified anything in 36 hours since Sunday on the train. I noted that the menu sat at X1 the way the lamp on the small desk sat in its corner, on, doing nothing, available. I lay back on the floor with the menu in the corner of my vision and the ceiling above me and one ally I had not had a week ago. The system amplified my body. Soo-jin amplified my chances. The math was different and I had not finished doing the math yet. I closed my eyes and the menu stayed where it was, parked at X1. Yoon-young called at 10:42 on Tuesday, which was the first time she had called me at work in 3 months, and the second time she had called me at all this year. I was at the Sejong Logi desk with headphones on, working on the Choi report. My phone buzzed. The screen showed her name. I put down the highlighter and walked to the stairwell. Hello. When she said it back, her voice had the flatness of someone holding back something. She said, "Dad's surgery has been moved to Thursday." It had been scheduled for the end of the month. They were moving it up by 2 weeks. The hospital is asking for another 4.2 million. There's a specialist they're bringing in. I've been talking to billing for 2 hours. Her voice cracked once. The tears she had not shed in front of our mother were coming now. I listened. I asked the questions in the order they needed asking. How much do you have? 1,000,008. How much does Mom have? 400,000 in cash. The rest of her savings is in a fixed deposit that breaks tomorrow. I had 780,000 in my account. I did not tell her that. I'll figure it out. I'll have 4.2 M by tomorrow night. Min-jun, no, you can't. I can, tell the hospital yes. Don't go to uncle. I have to. She was quiet for a second. Thank you. I love you, I'll call tonight. I hung up, I stood in the stairwell for a minute, I walked back to my desk, I sat down, the report folder was open, I did nothing for a minute. At 1:08 I told Manager Choi I had a personal matter and would be back by 4. He nodded without asking. My uncle's office was in Uedo, 23rd floor of a building near the IFC, the founder and CEO suite of a mid-sized logistics consultancy. Reception called me in immediately. That was unusual. My uncle usually made people wait. The office had a view of the Han River. Uncle Tishik was 58, my father's older brother. He had the same broad shoulders my father had had before the cancer thinned him. He gestured me to sit. He poured 2 glasses of water from a pitcher on the desk. He did not say anything for 30 seconds. Dad's surgery is Thursday. The hospital needs another 4.2 million by tomorrow. Is that all? It's enough, I'll pay it back. You'll pay back nothing, I'll wire it to your sister tonight. I blinked. On one condition, you come home for the surgery, you don't disappear back to Seoul afterward. You stay until your father is out of recovery. That's at least 10 days. I'll be there Thursday morning. He nodded. He looked at me for a long second. You look thin. I've been eating. You've been eating ramyun. Eat real food. Yes, thank you. He stood up. He hugged me once briefly. He said, go back to work. I'll see you Thursday. I rode the elevator down. I caught the 7016 bus from Uedo back to Mapo. The ride was about 25 minutes. I sat by the window with a banana from the convenience store in my bag. I had not solved the problem, my uncle had. The system had given me no money. The system had given me no time. The system had given me no permission. The thing that had solved the problem was my uncle's checkbook. I thought about what the system could do, make me stronger, faster, smarter, more perceptive. The list was short. It could not make me richer. It could not heal my father, who was 1,200 kilometers away in a Busan hospital and who I could not put my hands on. It could not buy time. I noted that. I filed it. I got off the bus at the Mapo stop closest to my office. I walked back to Sejonglogi. I was at the lobby at 2:14. At 4:18 my phone buzzed. A text from Soo-jin, brother just messaged. They have nothing on file yet, but they're flagging the clip. Talk tomorrow lunch. I typed back, yes. Thursday I'm flying to Busan for my dad's surgery, back next Sunday. She replied, okay, let me know if you need anything. I'm okay, thank you. I put the phone down. I worked on the report until 6:15. I took it home and worked on it until 11. I called my sister at 11:14, a short call, 10 minutes, mostly logistics. The hospital would accept the wire in the morning. The surgery was at 8 Thursday. My flight to Gimhae landed at 6:30. We said I love you. I hung up. I lay on the bed in my clothes with the menu in the corner of my vision and the calendar entry for Thursday morning on my phone, and one ally, and one uncle, and one sister, and one father, in the order I had been thinking about them. The system sat parked at X1, the way the chicken and beer place sat below me, available. The menu had not solved a single thing today. It was going to have to wait its turn. The knock came at 7:32 on Wednesday evening, which was an hour I usually spent making instant ramyun and looking at the wall. I had the small overnight bag open on the bed, half-packed for the early flight to Busan in the morning, 3 shirts, my shaving kit, the choraport folder so I could read it on the flight. The knock was 2 raps, then a pause, then one more, not a delivery knock, not a neighbor knock. I looked at the menu in the corner of my vision. I tapped my thumb against my index finger twice. Per X10. I listened, one person on the other side of the door, breathing slowly, no apparent stress, no noise that suggested a weapon being handled or a team behind him, just a man standing in the corridor. Per X1. I opened the door. The man in the corridor was mid-40s, neat, charcoal suit, no tie, leather portfolio. He said, "Mr. Park, my name is H-Wang Gun-Ho. I'm with the Specialist Bureau, Anomaly Recovery Unit. Do you have 10 minutes? Come in." H-Wang sat at the small desk under the window. I sat on the floor with my back against the bed, the only other place to sit. H-Wang opened the leather portfolio. He took out a tablet. He turned it so the screen faced me. He played 4 clips in sequence. The first was the subway clip from Sunday night. He said, "You're aware of this one." The second was footage from a security camera at the Sejong Logi building's second-floor fire stairs landing. Me climbing the stairs Friday night, 3 weeks ago, at X100 SDR. He said, "Internal building security. Archived but flagged by an automated pattern detection system the Bureau monitors." The third was me in this official kitchenette on Wednesday morning, viewed through my laptop's front-facing webcam, raising SDR to X10 and crushing the paper cup. He said, "Your laptop's webcam was activated by a routine Bureau scan. We do not retain footage longer than 72 hours without a court order, which we will obtain on Friday." The fourth was a still frame. I did not recognize me on the Mapo bus on Tuesday afternoon from a traffic camera. He had overlaid a small graph showing thermal anomaly, +0, 4 degrees C above baseline next to my seat. He said, "This is from a thermal imaging camera the Bureau operates on the Mapo arterial. We're not entirely sure what amplified the temperature differential. We'd like to know." I said nothing. He closed the tablet. "You have a documented anomaly. The Bureau acquires anomalies. We provide a salary that's substantially higher than your current temp rate, training, support, containment in case something goes wrong. In exchange, you work for us. You don't deploy your ability without our coordination. You're not a target for any other agency or any private actor. And if I say no, then you're not under Bureau protection. We continue to monitor you under standard surveillance protocol. If you ever cross a threshold, public deployment, civilian harm, foreign actor contact, we acquire you involuntarily. I would rather we not." I thought for 10 seconds. "No, thank you." H-Wang nodded. "I expected that. The first offer is rarely accepted." He stood up. He took a plain white business card out of the portfolio, sans serif text, his name, a single phone number, no agency. He set it on the small desk. "When you change your mind, call this number, not before then. I'm flying to Busan tomorrow morning. My father has surgery." "I know, I hope it goes well." I was quiet. "We will not approach you while you are with your family. The Bureau does not work that way." "Thank you." He walked to the door. He opened it. He paused in the doorway. "Mr. Park, the thermal anomaly on the bus. We think it was something you were not aware of doing. I would like you to consider what that means." He closed the door behind him. I sat on the floor for 5 minutes. I picked up the business card. I put it in my wallet. I finished packing the overnight bag. At 8:14, I called my sister. "I'm on the 6:30 flight in the morning. I'll be at the hospital before 9. "Okay, Mom and I will be there. Tell Dad I love him." "I will." At 8:22, I called Uncle T-Shik. I confirmed the wire had cleared. He said it had. He said he would see me Thursday. I thanked him. We hung up. I texted Sujin from my burner. "Bureau visited tonight." I declined. "Flying to Busan in the morning. Be careful." She replied almost immediately, "Okay, be safe. Call me from Busan." I set the alarm for 4:30. I lay on the bed in the dark. I thought about the thermal anomaly line. The system had not told me about it. The system reported what I asked it to do. It did not report what I was doing without asking. That was a category of behavior I had not known about. I noted that. I filed it. I lay on the bed in the dark with the menu in the corner of my vision, an H-Wang Gunhose business card in my wallet, and a 4:30 alarm on my phone, and a thermal anomaly the system had not told me about. I had week-ahead permission and bureau-grade surveillance, and one ally and one uncle and one sister, and a father in surgery in 12 hours. I closed my eyes and the menu stayed where it was, parked at X1. He&D at 6 in the morning had the same wet sand it had had when I was 9, and the gulls hadn't changed either, and the only thing on the beach that was different was me. I walked for 10 minutes before stopping at a stretch of beach where nobody else was within 50 meters. The October air was cool and salt-thick. My father's surgery had gone well 2 days ago, recovery on track, but I had been turning over H-Wang's visit since Wednesday night, and the not sleeping had finally pushed me out of the hospital and onto the beach. I tapped my thumb against my index finger twice. Per X100. The beach came alive, gulls' wings overhead, fishing line drag on the rocks at the water's edge, a jogger breathing 80 meters away, a transistor radio in a Korean fisherman's pocket playing Old Trot. I sat with it for 30 seconds. The layered sound was readable now, like a song with the instruments separated. Per X1000. The world became the inside of a war. I held it for 10 seconds. I dropped to X100. Per X10000. This level was new. I had never gone above X1000 before. Above the cacophony of X1000, a new layer surfaced. I could selectively attend to one sound and the others receded. I attended to an engine. A parked engine, idling, 2 blocks inland from the beach. A black sedan idling next to an office building loading dock. 3 voices inside it. One subject is on the beach. Approximate location, He&D Section 3, no physical contact with subjects of interest. Another H-Wang said no approach, we watch. The first, acknowledged. I dropped per X1. I kept walking. I did not turn toward the sedan. I did not change my pace. H-Wang had said no bureau contact while I was with family. H-Wang had said no approach. H-Wang had not said no surveillance. There was a category of lying that worked by leaving the load-bearing word out of the promise. H-Wang had used it on me. He had used it knowing I would catch it. He had used it because the Bureau wanted me to know the Bureau was watching even when the Bureau had said it would not be. The visit on Wednesday night had been the offer. The sedan on Sunday morning was the footnote. The footnote was the part you were supposed to read. I noted that. I filed it. At 8:14, I was back at Busan University Hospital. My father was awake, weak, smiling. My mother was sitting in the chair next to the bed. Yoon Young was at the nurse's station getting 3 coffees. The ward was quiet. You walked far. I needed to think. Don't think about work today. Sit with me. Okay. I sat. My mother held my hand briefly. Yoon Young came back with the coffees. We sat together for an hour. I did not tell them about the sedan. Not telling them was a different kind of cost than the cost of being seen at Sejonglogi. I sat with that too. At 1:30, I told my mother I was going for a walk during her nap. I walked 12 blocks to a convenience store in central Busan. I found a payphone outside. I used cash. I dialed Sujin's number. I had memorized it on Wednesday before I left Seoul. She picked up on the 3rd ring. It's me, cell phones aren't safe. Okay. 3 men in a black sedan, surveillance, He&D beach this morning. H-Wang lied about the no-contact rule, they're watching, just not approaching. She was quiet for 2 seconds. I'll tell my brother, he'll know what to do with that. Be careful, they might be on you too. I figured, call me from another payphone Sunday night, before you fly back. Okay. Min-jun, your father's okay. He's okay. We hung up. I walked back to the hospital with the menu in the corner of my vision and the payphone receipt in my pocket and the certain knowledge that H-Wang had lied. The Bureau was not honoring its rule. That meant the Bureau's rules were not the rules I would be working under. I closed the hospital door behind me and sat down next to my father, and the menu stayed where it was, parked at X1. I walked 12 blocks to a payphone. I had not used Saturday because Saturday's payphone might have been logged by now. And 12 blocks in Busan on a Sunday night was 12 blocks of garlic and grilled meat and one karaoke bar 3 doors down from where I made the call. Soo-jin picked up on the first ring. "I'm here. Same call sign as last time. We are good." "Tell me." She did. Her friend's older brother was Kim Jun-tae. He worked in the Specialist Bureau's analyst pool, not the field ops side that H-Wang gun-ho led. He had been at the Bureau for 8 years. He did not know H-Wang personally, but he had seen H-Wang's case files. The Bureau had my file open. It contained the subway clip, the stairwell security footage, the laptop webcam footage, and the thermal imaging clip from the Mapo bus. It had also been quietly cross-referenced against 3 other low-grade pattern flags from the last 6 months that did not involve me. The Bureau was trying to figure out whether my anomaly was part of a larger pattern they had been tracking. The Bureau's standard timeline after a documented anomaly was 30 days. My case had been escalated 72 hours from the moment H-Wang knocked on my door Wednesday night. That gave me until Saturday night, 4 days from now. H-Wang's office was preparing involuntary acquisition paperwork. The Bureau had done involuntary acquisitions before. They were not violent. They were bureaucratically irreversible. Subjects were placed in containment training for 90 days minimum. Subjects were released eventually, but with a contract they could not leave. My brother could lose his job for telling me. He's telling me because his daughter is your age, and he doesn't want this for her either. Thank him. I thought for 10 seconds. 4 days isn't enough. What's the plan? 3 options. 1, you take the Bureau's offer voluntarily. The brother thinks you'd be treated reasonably. 2, you leave Korea. He says he can help with that quietly. 3, you fight. Option 3, what does that look like? My brother doesn't know. He's an analyst, not a strategist. But he said, H-Wang's team has 6 field operators. They all run at X10 multiplied stats, the Bureau standard. None of them have ever encountered an X10000000. They literally do not know what you are. I was quiet. I'll be at your apartment Monday night. Don't pick me up at the airport. Don't text me. I'll be there by 9 p.m., walking different routes. Yes. In the meantime, don't go to work tomorrow if you can avoid it. Take a sick day or work from a coffee shop you don't usually use, anywhere except your normal patterns. I'll go to my mother's apartment in Songpa. She's at a retreat all week. I have a key. Good, don't carry your phone there. Buy a prepaid phone tonight. Text me the number with 1 word from the locker scene of a movie we both saw. I'll know. Okay. I'll see you Monday. Be careful coming back. They'll meet you at Gimpo. I know. We hung up. I walked back to the hospital. The streets of Busan were loud and warm around me at 10:30 p.m., a city full of people who had not been put on a Bureau watch list. 11:20, I sat in the second chair next to my father's bed. The ward was quiet. My father was asleep. My mother was asleep in the chair next to the bed, head tilted, a paperback in her lap. Yoon-young was asleep on the small fold-out couch by the window. I looked at my father. I thought about the things I could do with the system: lift a kettle at X10, climb stairs at X100, hear a sedan idling at X10000, and the things I could not do: heal him at any multiplier, by any of us time. I sat with that. I watched the heart monitor's small green line for 2 hours. At 1:40 my mother woke briefly, saw me sitting, smiled tiredly, and went back to sleep. I sat until 6. I got up, I kissed my father's forehead. He stirred without opening his eyes. Be careful in Seoul. I will. I gathered my bag. I walked to the elevator. I walked out of the hospital into a Busan morning that smelled like the harbor and not like Seoul. The flight was at 8. The cab to Gimhae was outside. The menu sat in the corner of my vision, the way the harbor sat in the bay, present, available, with all of its weather still to come. I closed the cab door behind me and the menu stayed where it was, parked at X1. I landed at Gimpo at 9:14 on Monday morning instead of at Gimhae at 8:30, which the Bureau had not anticipated because Kim Jun-tae had not put a Jeju transfer flag in their tracking system, and the difference between Gimpo and the Bureau team waiting at Gimhae was 80 kilometers and 3 hours. I spent the morning moving. Subway, transfer, walk, subway, transfer, 15 transfers in 6 hours, no clear pattern, no destination. I got a haircut at a Hongdae barber I had never been to before. I ate lunch standing at a kimbap stand in Insadong. I bought a new burner phone with cash at a Sinchon mobile shop. At 3:50, I texted Soo Jin from the burner. On schedule, drop your phone in your mother's freezer when you arrive at her apartment. She replied, locker scene was the one where she finds the key. I confirmed her, the locker scene reference was the agreed cipher. I kept moving. At 10 to 4, I decided I needed to do one more thing before going to Soo-jin's mother's place, drop a sick leave form at Sejonglogi to maintain my cover with Choi. It was deliberate, a small visible signal that I had not vanished, which would slow the bureau by a half step. I walked to the Sejonglogi building. I was in the lobby at 4:17 p.m. At 4:24, I was in the Sejonglogi conference room. Manager Choi had led me in. Hwang Gun-ho was at the head of the table. 4 other bureau operators were positioned around the room, 1 by the door, 2 by the windows, 1 by the small side door to the supply room. They wore neutral business clothes. They looked ordinary. They were not. Mr. Park, thank you for coming. I dropped off paperwork. I'm not staying. I'd like you to stay, voluntarily. We have a vehicle downstairs. The bureau facility in Gwacheon will be more comfortable than what comes next if you don't. I looked at the doors. I looked at the windows, 14th floor, all-glass facade, every 4th pane a casement window that opened about 6 inches for ventilation. I looked at the operators. Define what comes next. Involuntary acquisition under Specialist Bureau Emergency Authority. Signed by the Deputy Director Friday morning. Effective on contact. I'm going to refuse and leave through that window now. Hwang's expression did not change. The windows open 6 inches. You'll not fit through. I will. I tapped my thumb against my index finger twice. SDR X100. ARGI X1000. Per X100. I moved. I reached the casement window in 0.4 seconds. I bent the anodized aluminium frame outward. SDR X100 turned the 6-inch gap into a 60 cm gap in one motion that flexed the frame outward like aluminium foil. I went through headfirst onto the narrow exterior ledge 14 stories up. The ledge was 30 cm wide, slick from the morning's rain. I traversed it, AGI X1000, 8 meters to the building's corner in about 1.5 seconds. I went around the corner. I reached the building's fire escape on the north side, a steel ladder running from the roof down to the 4th floor where it joined the standard fire stairs. I grabbed the topmost rung and slid down. SDR X100 controlled my deceleration. AGI X1000 kept my hands placed for grip. I hit the 4th floor landing in about 8 seconds. I dropped into the fire stairs and ran down 4 floors in about 3 seconds. I went through the ground floor fire door into a service alley behind the building. Total time from window to alley, about 13 seconds. Hwang's team was still in the conference room. SDR X10. ARGI X10. I came out of the service alley onto a Mapo side street at 4:31. I was running at AGI X10, fast enough to leave the area, but not so fast as to be obviously inhuman. I turned the corner onto a slightly busier street. I was about 3 meters past a 60-year-old woman walking the other direction with 2 bags of groceries when the wake of my passage caught her shoulder. She spun. She fell. She landed on her right hand. I heard her wrist crack. Per was still at X100, and the small clean snap was unmistakable. I did not stop. I kept running. 2 blocks later, I ducked into a public restroom in a Mapo subway station. I sat in a stall and dropped STR-AGIPER to X1. STR X1. AGI X1. Per X1. I sat for 30 seconds. I stood up. I walked out calmly. I took the Hongdae line. I got off at Sinchon. I walked 4 blocks to a payphone I had identified during the morning's drift. I dialed 119. Woman, 60s, 2 bags of groceries, broken right wrist, in front of 7-Eleven on the small lane behind Mapo-gu office building. Hurry. I hung up. I walked across the street to a coffee shop with a window onto the side street. I ordered an iced Americano. I sat at the window for 40 minutes. I saw the ambulance arrive at 4:56. I saw the paramedics offer her a stretcher. I saw her wave it off and walk into the ambulance on her own. I paid for the coffee. I left. I walked to Songpa with the menu in the corner of my vision and a woman in an ambulance and a building with a window frame I had bent open at 100 times normal force. The bureau would be moving by now. H-Wang would be furious. The wrist was an accident. The accident was mine. I closed my hand around the burner phone in my pocket and the menu stayed where it was, parked at X1. Soo-jin's mother's apartment in Songpa was on the 11th floor of a building that smelled like the laundry of an entire stranger's family, and I had been living in it for 5 days like a houseguest who could move a couch with one finger but had been asked not to. The morning sun came through the thin curtains in long, warm slats. Soo-jin had made a Korean omelette to go with her mother's leftover rice. We ate at the small kitchen table. I had been testing stats in the apartment all week. I had determined STR plateau around X1000000. Anything above started breaking my own bones. AGI plateau around X10000. Above that, my nervous system could not keep up with my muscles. INT useful up to X100. Above that, pattern overload that left me with a migraine. Per useful up to X10000 in controlled environments. I had not yet tested the X1000000 ceiling. The apartment was too small for that. Today was Yoon-young, 2 p.m. at Seoul Station Coffee Bean, 10 minutes face-to-face. Soo-jin had agreed to come with me as cover, but would stay across the platform. At 12:30, we left the apartment. We took Line 8 from Mongcheon-toseong, transferred to Line 2 at Jamsil, transferred to Line 1 at Sindorim, and got off at Seoul Station. Soo-jin got off 2 stops early and walked around for 20 minutes before getting back on. On the Line 1 stretch, I raised PER. Per X1000. I scanned the car. A man in a tan jacket at the far end of the car was wearing a phone that was talking back to a backend server in a way ordinary phones did not. Bureau surveillance. Per X1. I got off 2 stops before my target station and walked the rest of the way. I arrived at Seoul Station Coffee Bean at 1:54 p.m. Yoon-young arrived at 2:01. She was wearing the same denim jacket she had worn for 10 years. She had gotten thinner. She sat across from me. I had bought her an iced Americano without asking because she had been ordering iced Americanos since 2018, and she nodded her thanks. I have 10 minutes. Then I have to leave and you have to walk away and not look back. Okay. I put a 100 coin in my palm. SDR X10. I flexed my fingers slightly. The edge of the coin curled, visibly, a small inward pinch on one rim. SDR X1. I handed her the bent coin. She turned it over in her hand. Okay, I believe you. I have something. The bureau is hunting me. I'm not going to be reachable for a while. Tell Mom and Dad I'm taking a long work assignment in Vietnam. How long? I don't know, months, maybe more. She was quiet for 10 seconds. Are you safe right now? Today, yes. Some days, yes. Not always. She slipped the coin into her wallet. I am keeping the coin. She did not say it with any drama. She said it the way she would have said I am keeping the receipt. The coin was now hers. Don't tell me where you are. Don't text. Don't call. I don't want to know anything that someone could ask me. Yes. Be safe. Be safe. She stood up. She picked up her iced Americano. She walked out of the coffee bean. She did not look back. I watched her walk to her platform. I watched her board the KTX at 2:18 p.m. The train pulled out. She was gone. I walked to a Tom's 2 blocks from Seoul station. Soo-jin was already at a corner table. We did not sit together. I bought a coffee, drank half of it, and left 2 minutes after she did. We met up again at a Line 2 platform 15 minutes later. We took the long route back to Songpa, 3 transfers, then off at Jamsil, then 45 minutes on foot through neighborhoods, deliberately staying off arterials where drones could pattern match. I had PER at X100 throughout the walk. Per X100. I heard 2 drones in 45 minutes. Both passed over without stopping, but I steered us under awnings to break line of sight when each one was within 100 meters. We made it to the apartment at 4:23 p.m. Soo-jin made tea. I sat on the couch. I drank the tea Soo-jin had made and sat on the couch with the menu in the corner of my vision and a sister on a KTX heading south and a bureau still trying to figure out where I was. The cost of not telling Yoon-young for 12 days had been a small constant weight I had not measured. The cost of telling her had been a different weight, and I did not know yet whether the new one was heavier or lighter than the old one. I closed my eyes, and the menu stayed where it was, parked at X1. Hwang Gun-ho knocked on Soo-jin's mother's apartment door at 10 a.m. on Monday morning, alone, with a paper cup of coffee in one hand and a thin manila envelope in the other. And the menu in the corner of my vision had told me he was at the door 8 floors before he was at the door. I had PER at X100 baseline now during waking hours. I had been running it for a week to catch any approaches. Per X100. I heard the elevator open 8 floors down, a man's footsteps in the corridor. The cadence matched what I remembered of Hwang's. I said to Soo-jin, Hwang's coming up, alone. Let him in. The knock arrived at exactly 10, 2 raps, a pause, 1 more. I opened the door. Mr. Park, Ms. Lee, may I sit down? Yes. He sat at the kitchen table. He set the paper cup of coffee aside. He opened the manila envelope and laid out 3 documents, a voluntary acquisition contract, a non-disclosure agreement, and a 50M sign-on bonus check. The acquisition will happen this week. I want to make one last offer in person. He looked at me. The terms are 150 million sign-on, annual salary of 180 million, bureau standard benefits, 4 years minimum. After 4 years, you can renegotiate or leave with our recommendation. You will be assigned to Anomaly Recovery Unit 3, domestic operations, not foreign. You will not be deployed against civilians. You will not be deployed against South Korean targets. You will be deployed against external threats to the state, North Korean operations, foreign acquisitions of South Korean technology, that kind of thing. I looked at the contract. I looked at Hwang. Tell me what you're running at. His expression flickered, half a second. Bureau standard, X10 on all stats. I'm running X10000000. His next breath was shallower. I know. How do you know? The window frame at Sejong Logi. Our materials engineers ran the math. The aluminium was rated to 4 kilonewtons. You bent it outward at approximately 400 kilonewtons. That is not human scale, and it is not X10 scale. The lowest your peak multiplier could be is X100. We do not believe X100 is your peak. It isn't. He nodded. You are a category we have no playbook for. The Bureau has never acquired anything like you. This is the difficulty. I thought for 10 seconds. The offer was reasonable on paper. 150M would clear my uncle's debt for me. 180M annual would let me send my parents real money. The non-deployment against civilians clause was real. I could tell from how he said it. I appreciate the offer. I am not going to take it. May I ask why? Because the system lands on you on a Tuesday at 12:17 in the middle of a tuna kimbap. Because by Tuesday at 12:18 you are dying of your own heartbeat. Because by Tuesday at 12:19 you have figured out how to dial it down, and the rest of the system is that figuring out. You can't outsource the figuring out to a bureau. You can't have someone else turn the dial for you. Your offer is real, and it is generous, and it is the wrong shape for what this is. H. Wang was quiet for 10 seconds. That is the longest answer I have heard a subject give to a recruitment offer. It is the only honest one I have. He nodded slowly, he stood up, he picked up the documents, he put them back in the envelope. Then I will see you under the involuntary protocol. Yes. You should not be at this address by tomorrow morning. We are already packed. He walked to the door, he opened it, he walked out. 10:38, Soo-jin and I finished packing. We had prepared the go-bags in advance. Mine had clothes, the burner, H. Wang's business card from the official visit, the bent 100 coin I had practiced with before showing my sister, my passport, and 1,780,000 in cash. Hers had clothes, her own burner, her notebook, her wallet, and a ring her mother had given her on her 20th birthday. We wiped down the apartment for Prince. Soo-jin's mother did not know any of this and would come back from her retreat to a clean apartment. We took the service stairs to the basement. We exited through the parking garage. We walked 3 blocks to a 24-hour convenience store. I bought 2 prepaid SIM cards. We got on a bus going north, not east toward Mapo, predictable, not south toward Suwon, also predictable, north toward Uejongbu. The bus rolled north through the Sunday evening Seoul traffic with the menu in the corner of my vision and Soo-jin's wrist warm against mine, where we held the handrail of the same seat arm. I had said no to the bureau 3 times now. The next time H. Wang and I spoke, he would be carrying paperwork and a team and no question to ask me. I closed my eyes and the menu stayed where it was, parked at X1. The abandoned site northeast of Uejongbu was the kind of place a developer left behind when his loans collapsed, and the city ran out of will to clean up after him, which made it perfect for a thing I had decided to do. 5:30 Wednesday morning. The construction site was quiet. Half-built apartment towers rose above me with their steel frames exposed. I walked in through a break in the fence. The site was empty. In the central core, I found my target, an ungrouted, non-load-bearing I-beam at the 3rd floor level. I took off my jacket and folded it on a concrete slab. I had left Soo-jin a note at the motel, back by noon. If not back by noon, take the cash and the passport and leave Korea. I stood in front of the beam. I tapped my thumb against my index finger twice. SDR X10. SDR X100. The air around my right arm thickened, a faint mist, only visible to me. SDR X1000. The mist became a halo, thermal differential. This was what H. Wang had been seeing on the bus. SDR X100000. SDR X100000. SDR X10000000. SDR X10000000. At X10000000, the air shimmered visibly around my arm. I held it for exactly 0.1 seconds. The system surfaced a timer reading 000010. I swung. My fist hit the I-beam. A 30 cm section of the I-beam disintegrated, not broke, disintegrated, plasma, dust. The beam above and below the vaporized section flexed inward by about a meter. My right hand below the wrist exploded. Bones broke in places I had not known bones could break. Skin tore from the impact and the heat. My arm from the elbow down was unusable. SDR X1. I dropped to one knee. The system surfaced a new line. Region required. Recommended setting X10000000 for min. Cost cal confirm. I thought yes. Region X10000000. The hand started to rebuild. I could see it. Bones knit. Skin reformed. The whole rebuild took 4 minutes and 8 seconds. I stayed conscious through it. The pain was real, but it was a pain I had not felt before, the pain of a body being put back together rather than apart. Region X1. Calorie deficit, 71,200 cal. Eat immediately. 5:58. I walked out of the construction site. My right hand was fully functional, but the calorie deficit made my vision gray at the edges and my hands shake. I walked 4 blocks to a 24-hour convenience store. I bought 4 warm rotisserie chickens. They had 6 gimbap, 3 packets of ramyun, 2 bento boxes, 6 bananas, 2 Snickers bars, and 4 bottles of Pocari Sweat. The cashier, a tired 20-something, did not ask. Total, 184,300. Cash. I carried the bags to a small park 2 blocks away. I sat on a bench. I ate. The eating took 2 hours. I paused once to walk to a public restroom and vomit. I came back and kept eating. By 8:30, the calorie line showed positive balance. I stood up. I walked back to the motel. I got there at 9:15 a.m. Soo-jin was sitting on the bed in the same clothes she had slept in. She had been crying. Her burner was on the small table. Junti texted at 6 this morning. Burner I didn't know he had. He's in bureau custody, but he's alive. Coordinated holding facility. He didn't give us up. The building frame analysis was how H-Wang found us. That's good news. Where were you? Construction site. I needed to know the ceiling. And I raised my right hand, unmarked, skin smooth. I broke this hand at 5:36 a.m. I rebuilt it by 5:40 a.m. The ceiling exists. She was quiet for 10 seconds. Get in bed, sleep for 18 hours. I'll wake you when there's news. Yes. I climbed into the bed in my clothes. I slept for 19 hours with the menu in the corner of my vision and Soo-jin watching the burner phone next to the bed. The ceiling existed. The ceiling cost 70,000 calories per 4-minute application. The ceiling broke me and put me back together. I had needed to know. I closed my eyes and the menu stayed where it was, parked at X1. The text arrived at 11 a.m. on a Tuesday, and the number it came from was a Korean cell number that had no carrier registration, which meant the bureau had spun up a fresh SIM specifically for this conversation. Soo-jin's burner buzzed. She read it. She handed the phone to me. We have your sister Yoon-young at the Busan precinct office, not in custody for her own safety. Come to Mapo Bridge tonight at 11 p.m. alone. We'll release her by 11:30 p.m. H. I read it 3 times. Get me a landline. Soo-jin went downstairs. She came back 2 minutes later with permission from the motel reception to use the front desk phone for 1,000. I dialed my sister's home number in Busan. Yoon-young picked up after 4 rings. Are you home? Yes, I just got home from work. Why? Nothing, I'll call back tonight. I hung up. I walked back upstairs. I said to Soo-jin, bluff, she's home, they want me at the bridge. I spent the afternoon and evening building a calibration profile for the encounter. SDR X1, AGI X1, INT X1, IGN X1, Luck X1, CHR X1, Hunger X1, Fatigue X1, Emotion X1, PER X100. Profile saved as Bridge. I ran through the logic with Soo-jin. If H-Wang is at X10, his SDR is 10 times mine. His punches break ribs, not glass. He can run faster than I can normally run. If I match him at X10, I might lose because he has trained at X10 for years and I have not. If I run X100, he beats me on judgment because he knows me by now and I don't know him. If I run X, I kill him and probably bring the bridge down. The right move is X1 with PER elevated. I let him commit. I read his commit. I sidestep. I let him exhaust himself, then I dictate the terms. That assumes he's coming alone. He's coming with a team, but he'll have them stand off. The first exchange will be one-on-one. After that, I'll improvise. Okay. 9:30. I was dressed for the bridge, same brown jacket I had worn on the subway in CH7. The menu had the bridge profile preloaded. I was about to walk out. I stopped at the door. If I'm not back by 1 a.m., take the cash. There's 1,780,000 in the front pocket of my bag. Take my passport too. Go to your mother's apartment in Songpa. She comes back from her retreat on Saturday. Tell her everything. Let her help you decide what's next. You'll be back. Probably, just in case. She stepped toward me. She kissed me once short on the corner of my mouth. The first time we had kissed. BX1 plus a little purr. Yes. Yes. I walked out. I took the elevator down. I walked out into Myeongdong on a Tuesday night. I took the subway to Mapo. I got off at Hapjeong. I walked the rest of the way to Mapo Bridge. 10:51. I was on the south embankment of Mapo Bridge, 8 minutes before the meeting. Traffic on the bridge was moderate. The pedestrian walkway on the south side was empty except for one couple at the far eastern end leaning on the railing taking photos. I saw the bureau van park on the western shoulder at 10:55. I saw Hwang Gun-ho get out of it at 10:58. He walked toward the bridge. A man and a woman in plainclothes followed him at 50 meters and then peeled off to take up positions at either end of the walkway. The walkway was now closed at both ends. Profile loaded, bridge. Per X100. The world around the bridge came into focus the way it had on Hyundai Beach. Hwang's footfalls on the sidewalk 30 meters ahead. The bureau van's engine idling and the dispatcher's voice on its radio. The couple at the eastern end, speaking Mandarin about which side of the bridge had the better lighting for photos. I waited. Hwang stopped 3 meters from me. Mr. Park. Hwang. The river was the river, and the bridge was the bridge, and the man 3 meters in front of me was the man who had decided 14 days ago that I belonged to the specialist bureau. I had 11 days of dialing behind me. He had a decade of training and a bureau-issued ceiling of X10. The menu in the corner of my vision read PER X100, every other stat X1. I tapped my right thumb against my right index finger twice. The menu stayed where it was. Hwang Gun-ho looked at me for 2 seconds at 3 meters and decided in the third second that we were going to do this, which I had already known was what was going to happen, but which I appreciated the etiquette of him confirming. His body settled into a stance, weight on the back foot, shoulders loose, hands at sternum height, breathing controlled. I read it at PER X100. I'm at Bureau Standard, X10 on all stats, as discussed. I'm at X1, with PER at X100. That's a poor choice. We'll see. He launched. The first move was a straight punch at the chest, Bureau trained to break ribs, Bureau amplified at SDR X10 to actually do it. At PER X100, I had read the punch's trajectory the moment his shoulder rotated. I sidestepped about 12 cm. His fist passed my chest and clipped the bridge railing on the follow-through, a 5 cm dent in cast iron. He reset. He went to Bureau Combat Form 3, 2 punches and a low kick. I read each move and slipped. He switched to Form 7, a feint, a grab, a sweep. I read the feint and the sweep, but let his grab connect because I wanted him to commit. I used AGI at X1, regular human reflex, which is faster than he expected from someone supposedly inactive to twist out of the grab. His sweep missed. He reset again, breathing harder. He went to Form 11, Bureau's exhaust the opponent form, built around constant low-grade pressure. I did not engage. I retreated 2 meters. He advanced. I retreated 2 meters. He advanced. We did this for 30 seconds. By the end of 30 seconds, he was breathing audibly. The cost of running AGI X10 plus SDR X10 plus PER X10 simultaneously was significant. Bureau training was good, but it did not change the underlying calorie math. He had burned roughly 4,000 calories in 60 seconds. He was sweating. I had burned about 150 calories. At the 60-second mark, he stopped advancing. He stood at 3 meters. He stared. "You're not at X10. I told you X1. Then why am I exhausted?" "Because at PER X100, I see where you're going to punch before you do. You're fighting me alone, but I have your moves on a quarter-second delay. You can't connect." He was quiet for 10 seconds. "That's not a known countermeasure. I made it up 2 hours ago." He put his hands on his knees. He breathed. I took one step inside his reach. He did not react, too tired to react. "Stop." He stopped. "I'm at X1, you're at X10. You're exhausted and I am not. I could go to X100000000 from here. I'm not going to. We're going to talk." "Talk." "Here is the deal. I do not work for the Bureau. I will not sign any contract. I will not take a salary. In exchange, I will consult without fee on my own schedule by phone on any case the Bureau has involving an anomaly above the X10 standard. You bring me a problem, I look at it. I tell you what I see. If I'm willing to help in person, I help. If I'm not, I don't. You leave me and Lee Soo-jin alone. You leave my family alone. You leave Kim Jun-tae alone, and you release him from custody by Friday. I don't have authority to agree to that on the spot. You have 48 hours, get the authority. And if I don't get the authority, then we have another conversation, on worse terms. You should hope you get the authority." He was quiet. "That is a reasonable offer. It is the only one I will make." He nodded. "How will I reach you?" I gave him a number, Soo-jin's burner, registered to a fake name. He wrote it down. 48 hours. Yes. 11:11. We walked off the bridge in opposite directions. Hwang walked west toward the Bureau van. He was still breathing hard. He did not look back. The 2 Bureau operators at the bridge ends stepped out of his way. I walked east. I passed the Mandarin-speaking couple at the eastern end. They were still photographing the river. I dropped Per from X100 to X1. Per X1. The world went quiet. I reached the eastern end of the bridge at 11:13 p.m. I took a different subway line back to Myeongdong than the one I had taken in. I arrived at the motel at 11:51 p.m. Soo-jin was awake. "It worked." "I know, he texted my burner 40 seconds ago. He says he's calling Bureau leadership tonight." 48 hours. 48 hours. I sat down on the bed. I looked at the menu. I started to laugh, quiet, exhausted, real. I laughed for about 30 seconds. I had not laughed in 14 days. I lay back on the bed in my clothes with the menu in the corner of my vision and Soo-jin's hand on the back of mine and a bureau standing down somewhere in Seoul. The dial sat at X1 the way it had sat at X1 for most of the fight. The fight had not been won by amplification. The fight had been won by knowing when not to amplify. I closed my eyes and the menu stayed where it was, parked at X1. Soo-jin's actual apartment in Hongdae had the same fingerprints on the bathroom mirror she had left on it 16 days ago, and seeing them again was a small kind of homecoming I had not realized I had been postponing. We had been here since Wednesday morning, after Hwang called the burner at 7 a.m. Wednesday to confirm Bureau leadership had accepted the deal. We had been catching up on sleep. I had eaten 3 real meals in 3 days for the first time in 2 weeks. I had unpacked my go bag and put my clothes in the small dresser she had cleared for me. Soo-jin was sitting on the couch reading something on her old phone, which Jun-tae had helped me sanitize on Wednesday afternoon. The first morning back, I had stood in the bathroom for 10 minutes looking at her fingerprints on the mirror because it was the first surface in 17 days I had looked at without thinking about how to leave through it. I had not noticed until I noticed. Jun-tae had been released Thursday night. Soo-jin had spent 40 minutes on the phone with him. He was tired. He was eating his sister's food. He did not blame anyone. He told Soo-jin that the Bureau had asked him about her exactly twice and had moved on quickly once they got the building frame analysis back. He did not lose his job. He had been moved laterally to a desk-only role, with the implication that he would not be back on field-adjacent work for a long while. He said the lateral was okay. He said the lateral was, in fact, a relief. I had been thinking about calling my uncle. I picked up the phone. Uncle Tishik answered on the second ring. Uncle, it's me. I'm okay. I know you're okay. Your sister told me you would call this week. She didn't tell me what you've been doing. She told me you were okay. I'm coming home this weekend. Dad's post-op checkup is Monday morning. Yes. I'll fly down tomorrow. I'll stay through Tuesday. Good. I'm bringing someone. Bringing someone. A friend. She's been helping me through the thing I haven't told the family about. What's her name? Lei Sujin. Tell her she'll have her own room. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you, Uncle. Then I called Yoon Young. She picked up on the first ring. It's me. You sound like you're at home. I am at home, different homes. Okay. It's over. I worked out an arrangement. I'll tell you in person on Sunday. Okay. I'm bringing someone home. The friend. Yes. I bent the coin. I know. Sunday. Sunday. We hung up. I stood in Sujin's kitchen for a minute. I put the phone down on the counter. I had been preparing for the conversation that did not happen, the one where my sister asked me to explain everything, where my uncle asked me to explain everything, where everyone I had not been honest with for nearly a month asked me to explain. Neither of them had asked. Yoon Young had heard it's over and Sunday and nothing else. My uncle had heard I'm coming home and I'm bringing someone and nothing else. The not asking was its own kind of answer. It was the answer of a family who knew that the explanation, when it came, would be longer than a phone call. They were willing to wait. I sat down on the floor with my back against the kitchen cabinets and breathed. The menu sat in the corner of my vision, every slider at X1, the bridge profile saved beneath the baseline. I had not amplified anything in 3 days. The not amplifying was its own kind of answer too. Friday 2 p.m. Sujin and I on the airport bus to Gimpo. We had one carry-on each. The bus was moderately full. We sat at the back. I looked at the menu in the corner of my vision, every slider at X1, the bridge profile saved beneath the baseline profile. I realized I had not amplified anything in 3 days. Sujin was reading a paperback she had been carrying around all week and not getting past page 50. I turned to her. Thank you. I haven't done anything. You handed me a USB stick once and stayed in the room. Okay, you're welcome. She went back to her book. The bus reached Gimpo at 2:50 p.m. We checked in. Our flight was at 4:15 p.m. We boarded the 4:15 and the menu sat in the corner of my vision the way it had sat in the corner of my vision for 16 days now, on doing nothing, available. The plane took off. The Han River shrank below us. The bureau was 3 days behind me and my father was an hour ahead, and Sujin's hand was on the armrest between us. I closed my eyes and the menu stayed where it was, parked at X1. I had been back at Sejonglogi for 28 days when the menu in the corner of my vision finally felt the way the dust on my monitor felt. Present, accepted, not worth a thought. Starburst crack in the old monitor was gone. It had replaced it at week 2. The technician had apologized for the delay. I had thanked him. Manager Choi was at his desk across from me, typing on a spreadsheet. The Q4 routing project I had delivered at human INT speed had been adopted. Hanjin Coastal and CJ Career Express were the carriers Sejonglogi was using through Q4 now. Choi had put me on permanent temp track at a slightly higher rate. I had taken the raise. I had the menu in the corner of my vision with the office profile loaded, every stat X1 except INT at X15. The 1.5 multiplier was small enough that Choi could not tell, large enough that I finished routine work in 3/4 the time it used to take. I had been using this profile for 2 weeks. Int X15. I finished the last routine row in the spreadsheet at 4:45 p.m. I saved the file. At 4:55 p.m. my phone vibrated. A Chwang gun-ho. He had called twice in the month, once for an anomaly in Dijian. I had talked his analyst through a calibration approach over the phone in 20 minutes. Once for a case involving a foreign actor approach to a South Korean researcher, I had declined, said it was outside the deal. The relationship was professional. I picked up. Mr. Park, we have a new case. I would appreciate your input. Well, a 19-year-old in Pohang, activated yesterday. He is amplifying. He has hurt his mother. He does not know how to calibrate. I was quiet for 2 seconds. Daytime. He is currently in containment. The Bureau is keeping him calm. We are not engaging beyond keeping him calm. I'll fly down tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. flight. Have someone meet me at Pohang. Yes. One condition, I talk to him alone first. No Bureau team in the room. Agreed. Send me what you have. I'll read on the flight. Yes, thank you, Mr. Park. We hung up. I put the phone down on my desk. 6 p.m. I closed the laptop. Choi looked up at the exact moment he always did. He looked back down. I walked to the elevator. I rode it down 14 floors. I walked out into Mapo at 6:08 p.m., evening traffic already thickening. I looked at the menu. INT was still at X15 from the day's spreadsheet work. I dropped it. Int X1. The day's last calibration. A line surfaced in the corner of my vision that I had not seen since the activation cascade 28 days ago. Calibration complete. I smiled for half a second. I did not know exactly what the line meant, whether the system was telling me I had learned what the menu could do, whether it was just recognizing a steady state, whether it was the kind of completion a tutorial finished, or the kind a teacher saw in a student who no longer needed teaching. I stood on the sidewalk outside the Sejong Logi building with the Mapo evening moving around me and the menu in the corner of my vision, and a sentence the system had taken 28 days to write. I had not, until that moment, considered that the system might know when I had learned. I filed it. I walked toward the subway. I rode to Hongdae. I thought about the kid in Pohang on the way. 3 weeks ago, I could not have explained the dial to anyone. I had barely understood it myself. Now I could explain it in 20 minutes to a stranger. That was what the system actually amplified, not strength. The actual thing the system amplified was the lesson. The moment you figured something out, the system made it permanent in a way an ordinary skill was not. I got off at Hongdae. I walked 4 blocks to Sujin's building. I buzzed. She buzzed me in. Her door was unlocked. She was at the stove making doenjang jjigae from the recipe her mother had sent her last week. I put down my bag. I got 2 bowls out of the cabinet. I set them next to her on the counter. We did not say anything for a minute. Bureau called. There's a kid in Pohang. I fly out at 6 tomorrow. Okay, I'll pack you a thermos of coffee tonight. Thanks. Stay safe. BX1 plus a little purr. Always. We ate doenjang jjigae at a small kitchen table with the menu in the corner of my vision and a 6 a.m. flight at the edge of tomorrow, and a kid in Pohang who had activated yesterday and did not yet know that the dial pointed both ways. The system had been on for 30 days. The first thing it had taught me was that the multiplier I needed was almost never the maximum. The last thing it had taught me was that the lesson was the actual amplification. I closed my eyes for a second, and the menu stayed where it was, parked at X1.